This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh, look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well this morning. Hope you've all had a relatively pleasant week, although I know it's hectic out there for some people. I hope everybody's well otherwise. Hope you're all looking forward to the holidays upcoming at the end of this next week. It's kind of hard for me to sort of alight my brain on the schedule of the holidays because my family and I already kind of celebrated our holiday earlier this month. So my mind isn't so stuck on the days counting down to the actual holiday. That's just a little piece of unnecessary trivia for you all. Anyway, good morning. It's Sunday morning. What's going on this Sunday morning? And who's going on with me? Ken Elliott, good morning. Jaeger Pony, Mike R, Swirl Blue, Arc 210, Burgid, Spittle Buggies, Matt Barnes, Keever Dam, No One Nowhere, Non Vitae Rex, The Useless Rebel, Saint Foogie. Hope you're all doing well. In a little bit change up, I had debated doing a video this week, or I should say doing a panel discussion on some topic or another. But I started thinking to myself, gosh, we're coming to the end of the year, kind of on reflection of things that have happened over the year. What haven't I looked at in a while? And I thought to myself, oh, yes, Hive diversity. It's been a long time since I looked up Hive diversity. Now, for those of you who might be new here, and I don't know if any of you are, but on the off chance, now or in the future, what is Hive diversity? It's a very interesting relationship that I've had sort of abstractly with this organization, company, product. So a brief review, a year or almost 2 years ago now, I think, something like that. I happened upon just randomly a Yahoo Finance video wherein someone was interviewing the CEO of something called Hive Diversity. And I had no idea what it was. And so I looked it up. And what it purports to be is an app on your phone that helps companies recruit diverse workforces, essentially. Now, what equates to diverse? Well, you can guess for yourself. I'm still waiting to hear from the company because they never really seem to say. And that's really sort of the long-standing mystery about this product, is how exactly do they achieve the end they advertise that they do for their client corporations, companies, entities, etc. What mechanism in their app leads companies to achieve a diverse workforce or a diverse hiring candidate, a recruitment candidate? I have read many articles. I have listened to I think it was the chief development officer, at least someone like in the executive branch of the company, try to describe what they do, and she never got specific. Anyway, if you're at all curious about my previous investigations, such as they are, into Hive diversity, you can look them up on the playlist on my channel. Because here's the thing. As far as I know, first and foremost, Hive diversity does not have its own YouTube channel. Which, I mean, companies don't have to. It's just a little odd. But they also don't have their own Twitter, which is also very odd to me. And as well, since they don't have a YouTube channel and they don't have a Twitter, I'm pretty sure I might be the most Hive diversity advertisement entity on both platforms, given how many times I've mentioned them. And if you look up Hive diversity on YouTube, I'm pretty sure, I could be mistaken, I'm pretty sure my videos come up in the first batch of results, which I don't think is very encouraging for the company when you've got some goofball constantly asking, what exactly does your company do? And after 3 or 4 live streams of trying to figure that out, still doesn't have quite an answer. But anyway, so I decided to check in on them today, for the heck of it, just as a brief review of how far their reach goes. Companies in the Hive, Disney Careers, UTA, I'm sure that's something important. American Express, Accenture. Oh, Accenture is my favorite. You know why Accenture is my favorite? There's a video I did several years ago. It's called Unfiltered Diversity, I think, or Unfiltered something. And it was one of the first times that a corporate executive stood up on a stage and without any pretense told the audience exactly what he means when he's talking about hiring diverse workforces. And it was such a revelation of clarity at the time that I was taken aback at just how candid the guy was. There are reasons why he was so candid, I think. But regardless, Accenture is one of my favorite little anecdotes when it comes to diversity hiring. Who else is in this? Wells Fargo, Kirkland and Ellis, whatever that is, Saks Fifth Avenue, Atlantic Records, Insight Partners, Out for Undergrad. Okay. We're back to Disney Careers. Okay. There's a lot more companies. Here, let's take a look real quick. Because these guys, last I checked, have an amazing reach. So yeah, I don't know. Okay, go away. Lamar, Starwood Capital Group, AEG, Ad Council, Alliance Bernstein. Who else? Arcadia University, AMP, Stony Clover, Capri, BC. I mean, it just goes on and on. Hack Diversity. All these companies. Jimmy Choo, Versace, on and on. These guys are plugged in all over the place. And they're finding diverse recruitment candidates for all of these companies and more. But my question remains, how? Because, and just at the risk of spoiling several of my other streams on this, to the best of my knowledge, they have not in any way I've seen distinguished themselves from any regular, and I mean regular in the relative sense, hiring app or hiring service or job seeking like monster.com. Remember monster.com? Are they still around? You know? Or yeah, think of your I need to find a job website. Okay. And on that website, you can learn how to build a resume or, sort of tweak your search options to find the best job and that kind of thing. Okay. Think of your basic boilerplate job opportunity hiring, looking up for a job, career opportunities site. Okay. Thus far, nothing about what I have read or heard about Hive Diversity distinguishes themselves from any of those. Yet they purport to provide specifically, it's in their name, diverse hiring candidates for companies. So, as a side effect of this, in trying to find out what Hive Diversity does and exactly how they do it without, sort of stepping over the line of possible civil rights violations, depending on what we're talking about, I have incidentally learned a lot more about just hiring practices in general in the modern day for diversity and equity. Because that's really all Hive Diversity has done for me so far. It's acted as basically a segue to knowledge of other things in the industry. So, with that being said, and not to try to repeat myself too much on previous live streams, I have looked up the latest article, or relatively latest article mentionings of Hive Diversity, and I thought we'd take a look and see what different companies, organizations, or publications have to say about these things. So, the first one on our list is from Business Wire and an announcement from Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley announces, quote, the Equity Collective, a diversity-driven collaboration between 23 wealth and asset management firms. And here are the bullet points. The Equity Collective is dedicated to educating, empowering, and developing the next generation of diverse leaders in the industry. Members have entered into a multi-year commitment, includes exclusive sponsorships with Boys and Girls Club of America, Hive Diversity, and Team Impact. I'll just say impact like that because it's all in capital letters. And when you've capitalized everything, you've added a whole lot of testosterone to your pronunciations. New York Business Wire. This is from November 17th, 2021. Morgan Stanley today announced the launch of the Equity Collective. Collective? Boy, is my mouth still waking up this morning? I swear, there's no pepper jack this early in the morning, but holy cats. An industry-leading group of wealth management and asset management businesses who have come together to educate, empower, and develop the next generation of diverse leaders in the finance industry. Diverse leaders, you say? Okay. What is diverse? And if you're focusing your efforts on people on the basis of certain attributes, the Equity Collective is composed of 23 members. Senior leaders across each member organization have agreed to participate in education and awareness events and initiatives in this multi-year commitment. Spearheaded by Morgan Stanley, members include American Century Investments, BNY Mellon Investment Management, Columbia Threadneedle Investments, okay, Diffractive Managers Group, DWS, First Eagle Investment Management, Franklin Templeton, FS Investments, Goldman Sachs Asset Management, Hartford Funds, Invesco, Janus Henderson Investors, John Hancock Investment Management, Macquarie Asset Management, Morgan Stanley Investment Management, Natixis Investment Management. Boy, in order to make your company like stand out from the crowd, put in something that's practically unpronounceable. Unpronounceable. I am doing myself no favors this morning. I'm sorry. New York Life Investments, Nuveen, PGIM Investments, PIMCO or PIMCO, Putnam Investments, T. Rowe Price, and Virtus Investment Partners. Or VIP, as they like to be known as. Research conducted via Morgan Stanley's Investor Pulse Poll found that among diverse groups of high net worth investors and entrepreneurs, I've been led to believe that there are no such things because of systemic. Anyway, finance repeatedly took the top spot as the industry that could most impact racial inequality. Okay, so you want to pay off everybody? Quote, by banding together, we can be a force multiplier to impact our industry in a meaningful way, unquote, says Andy Saperstein, corporate speak on extraordinaire, co-president of Morgan Stanley and head of Morgan Stanley Wealth Management. Quote, the Equity Collective is committed to investing early in underrepresented communities, focusing our efforts on increasing the pool of interested and qualified people that consider a career in financial services, unquote. Okay. So you're targeting money to people on the basis of, I'm assuming, I don't have any other information otherwise, racial demographics. Okay. Thank you, Mike R. Just call it a day, Scribe. I do call it a day. I call it Sunday, as do most other people, except in countries where they call it something else. But, you know. Anyway, moving on. Thanks for that note of encouragement, Mike. Appreciate it. Let's see. A study by Mercer concluded that Black and Latino students' interest in working in financial services crystallizes during high school versus college years for white students. So they get an interest earlier than... Wait. Okay. For that reason, the Equity Collective has established 3 key sponsorships to generate a spark of interest in finance in young people. Well, I thought that the demographics that you're most interested in. Wait, what do you mean by crystallize? Maybe I'm misremembering what crystallize means in that context. Isn't that something that, like, it's where it arrives, you know, it sort of bubbles up in someone, it crystallizes? Or maybe my vocabulary is off. Anyway, Boys and Girls Club of America, Team Impact, and Hive Diversity, with a focus on creating awareness and demystifying financial service career opportunities. Yeah, that's another thing that Hive Diversity says on several occasions, that they're trying to democratize the job-seeking process or the career-finding process, whatever that means. So demystifying, democratizing, etc., in order to break barriers while reaching future motivated leaders where they are. What? I never understand that either. We're going to meet them where they are. Like, okay, how? The Equity Collective will dedicate resources to Boys and Girls Club of America's Career Launch, a job readiness and career launch program with the ability to reach 4.6 million youths, the two youths, ages 13 to 18 years old. The work with Team Impact will focus on supporting college athletes as they grow into empathetic leaders through community engagements. As they grow into empathy. Okay. In working with virtual recruiting platform Hive Diversity, members will engage with next generation talent representing an ever evolving range of diverse backgrounds and experiences. That says absolutely nothing. Hive focuses on internship and entry-level placement opportunities, as well as building earlier and more equitable pipelines through virtual programming to expose all candidates to careers that exist within the industry. It's a job application app. Okay, and I know I'm going to be repeating this as we go. How does Hive specifically help companies recruit quote unquote diverse candidates? What mechanism in the app funnels candidates to companies that they want who are diverse? What filters are there? Where are they? And how does Hive do that? Now, one of my conspiracy theories, and I admit it's a conspiracy theory, about the utility of Hive Diversity, the app. Now, I'm not, okay, if you did not know, I am brilliantly not a lawyer, nor am I a constitutional expert, or even a civil rights law expert. But in my layman's understanding of things, companies violate civil rights when they hire people on the basis of explicitly or, in preponderance, race, gender, religion, so on. All right. That's violation of the Civil Rights Act. I do not know if there is a legal gray area if and or when a company in some part farms out their recruitment decisions, or at least the first phase of their recruitment decisions, to a third party. So and again, I do not know how it works, but in the absence of other information, I'm just speculating here. Let's say a non-involved third-party application does the illegal filtering of recommending candidates to another company, and then the company, with plausible deniability of what decision actually went into this recommendation, decides to take on that recommendation for potential hiring. Does that insulate the company from having to face the perils of civil rights law? That's my question. I do not know the answer to that. I do not know if that is what is going on, but I keep trying to figure out, how does Hive do what it does or says that it does? And of what benefit is that to their client companies? So if anybody out there either knows or has an inkling as to whether or not that could work as a legal insulation to such questions, I'd be curious to know. That's just my wondering. I don't know if that, again, I do not know if that is what Hive is doing effectively, but not knowing what it does do or how it does it, I have to wonder. Okay. Quote, we recognize our industry must do more to reach diverse talent. We are dedicated to increasing access for young talent and proactively raising awareness about the incredible opportunities in our field, unquote, says Margaret Flynn Martin, head of relationship management, Morgan Stanley Wealth Management. Quote, finding established organizations to do that with in order to move with intention and speed was one of our primary goals, unquote. There's something in that statement there that makes me think I might not be too far off the mark. Morgan Stanley is a leading global financial services firm, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, okay, so then Morgan Stanley advertises itself. There you go. There's article number 1 about the Equity Collective, which sounds like a superhero team, doesn't it? Equity Collective. Okay, well, that was article number 1. Let's move on to some more. And by the way, all of these articles come from Hive Diversity's own buzz and news release page on their website. So this is stuff that they want me to know is going on in and around them and their industry. So just for that. On to the next one from a publication called Protocol, which I've never heard of before. Recruiting is broken for Gen Z tech candidates. New tools give managers hope they can fix it. Oh, recruiting is broken. Why is it broken? What has broken for Gen Z specifically? Recruitment startups aim to help tech companies access a more diverse candidate pool and help students access opportunities they wouldn't have otherwise, or wouldn't have had otherwise. Why? As we go into the article, I want to know why specifically are Gen Z tech candidates being given the short end of the stick, and how? Jordan Brammer, a senior at New York University, said he used to apply to finance jobs through a mishmash of networks like LinkedIn and Google. Okay. But after being ghosted by one too many employers, you mean after being rejected for the... Okay. He realized he needed a better recruitment tool. So the problem wasn't with Jordan. It was with the tool. Oh, okay. He eventually stumbled across Hive Diversity. And really, in the absence of a Twitter account and a YouTube channel or any other of the common places you would think to find advertising or engagement on social media, I don't even think they have a Facebook account. You really do have to stumble across Hive Diversity, which is bizarre. A network connecting students and companies who might not have found each other otherwise. Okay, so are the other apps failing Jordan, or is Jordan just lazy? Because it's not that these opportunities don't exist, but he's relying on just these couple of things to find... Okay. Professional networking sites have been around for a while. You don't say, like, God, I don't know, the 90s? Yeah. LinkedIn, the dominant career development site, launched in 2003. But startups like Hive have popped up relatively recently, i.e. November of 2019, if I recall, or something like that. And by the way, when they started out with a bang because they had a gigantic list of clients within the first couple of months of existence, which is very... I mean, I don't know, maybe it's not bizarre. I don't know. It just seemed kind of bizarre to me because when I looked at them way back in, like, what was it? It was early 2020, and they'd only been in existence for like 6 months or something at that point. They had a list of clients at least as long, if not longer, than the ones that I cited there at the beginning of the stream. Anyway, but startups like Hive have popped up relatively recently, targeting young job seekers and claiming to tackle the access problem. No, they claim to deliver to their clients diverse candidates. But yeah, I guess they say, yeah, they do say democratizing. Okay, yeah, claiming. All right, okay. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud if you couldn't tell. In 2014, after finding themselves shut out of Silicon Valley jobs, 3 students at Michigan Technical University launched Handshake to create a more equal playing field for students looking for job opportunities. It now serves more than 9 million users and reached a $1.5 billion valuation in May. Gosh, a $1.5 billion valuation. I'm sure that's exactly how much the company is worth because I trust valuations, Theranos. Even TikTok wants to help young people find jobs. You don't say. Like eating Tide Pods. The platform launched TikTok video resumes in July. Video resumes. The first time I ever heard of video resumes was either the old dating services where you sent in a video or trying to get a job on the real world. The companies are all in on helping Generation Z find jobs and making the process more fair than it was for their parents. More fair. Quote, the tips and tools are literally at your fingertips, said Christine Cruz-Vagara. The tools and tips have been at your fingertips since the 90s, Christine. You have to know how to use them, and you still have to be very proactive about it. There does require a certain amount of shoe leather, so to speak, i.e. effort, if you really want to find jobs because sometimes, anyway. Handshakes chief education strategy officer. That statement comes from the chief education strategy officer. The tips and tools are literally at your fingertips. Okay, quote, you can introduce yourself to a peer at your institution. You can go meet a recruiter or employer. Those are things that are within your control, unquote. I think those things have always been within one's control. All depends on how much effort you're willing to put into it. Hiring is a painful, belabored process, both for the people desperate for jobs and for the places that want to hire them. I'll admit, it is not a fun task necessarily, but it's a necessary one. Big tech companies constantly look for ways to optimize their recruitment strategies. As Facebook's engineering hiring crisis, Google's brutal recruitment process, and a fake resume that garnered top tech interviews show. Fake resume that garnered top tech. These are hyperlinks to other stories, but I'll let them pass for now. The system is often broken. Facebook's engineering hiring crisis, Google's brutal recruitment process. The system is often broken. No, the system isn't broken. The policies at those specific companies might have problems. The system is broken. Are Facebook and Google the only companies out there to get jobs with? And for young people breaking into the job market, there's the age-old issue of access. It often feels to them like they're sending your resume, like they're sending your resume into the void. It often feels to them like they're sending your resume into the void. Well, if they're sending my resume into the void, I don't care because I already got a job. You know how I found my job? I'll give you a little thing. And this is, I understand it was in the dark days of 2007 or so, but anyway, here's how I found my job. I don't drive by choice, not by some other extraneous factor. And I wanted to be able to walk to work. Okay, so you know what I did? I went on to Google Maps and I typed in my address, and then I just looked on the map within a circle of about a 2-mile radius of where I live. And I searched for just the word company, right? Or incorporated or whatever. And all these little pips show up on the map within a 2-mile radius of where I live. And I was like, aha, that is where I will send my resume. Or walk a copy of my resume over to the business. I did both because I wanted a job. And when you don't have a job, or you're looking for a job, even if you already have one, which is the best situation, finding a job is your job. So you put as much effort into it as you would your regular workday. That is the kind of ethic that was instilled in me by my father. So anyway, I did this. I took my resume and sent my resume out to every company I could find or subsidiary within that 2-mile radius. And you know what happened? I got a call one day from a guy who said, hey, I just got your resume, and how'd you even find out about this job? I just posted it the other day. And I said, well, I didn't know there was a job. Let me explain to you how I found you. And the guy was so impressed with my sort of bargain basement ingenuity in job finding that he called me in for an interview. And I've been working there ever since. So sometimes you have to get creative and, make your own effort. I'm just saying, not to brag. But anyway, thank you, Keeverdam. Lexi's here. Start over. What? Lexi? Do I need to buy you an alarm clock or something? This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh, look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Okay, that's as much as I'm willing to do. That's it. I have things I have to get to, Lexi. I can't always operate on your schedule. It often feels to them like they're sending your resume into the void. And if a candidate didn't attend a top school or doesn't have a, quote, white sounding name, or if the candidate doesn't look or sound like other people who work at the company, recruiters may be biased against hiring the person. Okay, well, if you are operating under that suspicion, first and foremost, how do you solve for that problem? Right? If that is the problem, what does Hive diversity or Handshake or any of these other things do? What do they do to solve for that problem? The pandemic hastened the shift to primarily virtual recruitment and to a greater reliance on these tools. This is true. Gone are the days of crowded in person career fairs or flying out candidates for stressful interview processes. Instead, companies and students turn to networks like Handshake, often aided by universities. Yeah, I wonder if there's any, you know, payback going on there, any quid pro quo. If the hiring game was changing before COVID struck, it's definitely changed now. For young people, it may be changing for the better. If the hiring, it's changed for everyone. It's not just about young people. Okay. It's not just about young people. And not young people have been operating in long distance or virtual recruiting processes for a couple of decades now. So, jobs hunt for you. You don't hunt for jobs. Again, I would just push back against instilling that kind of mentality into today's youth. Okay. That passive sense of entitlement, not a good thing to have going forward. That's just me, though. Or maybe that's just me. Rembrandt Koenig, a Harvard Business School professor in the strategy unit. That sounds like a Harvard Business School professor name. Rembrandt Koenig. Studies the rise of outbound recruitment in companies' hiring strategies. He became interested in the topic after realizing that most of the famous hiring bias studies looked at people sending their resumes to companies. Quote, "This is not what we're seeing in the world. We're increasingly seeing people getting poached," unquote, Koenig said. Quote, "A recruiter is looking for someone partly enabled by the rise of things like LinkedIn, partly enabled by changes in the labor market," unquote. What that says absolutely nothing about anything. Okay, Koenig and his colleagues, Sally sells seashells, analyzed the prevalence of outbound recruiting, finding that 18% of workers were hired by recruitment in 2020 as compared to 4% in 1991. Okay, outbound recruiting. So poaching. Is that it? Okay, outbound recruiting. The percentage increases when it comes to Silicon Valley workers, high-skilled workers, and workers with LinkedIn profiles. The study looks at currently employed people, but Koenig is working on another paper about how this change affects people entering the workforce. How do recruiters evaluate young people with little work experience? You get an entry-level job and build up a resume. Unless it's something like you're in a very, very specialized niche industry and you're coming out of university with a degree in something very specific, and then that's what job fairs and recruitment drives are at colleges are for. How do recruiters evaluate young people with little work? You have to put them in a job first. You don't know. I mean, even a storied credential on your resume says nothing about how you are as an employee, how productive you are. That's what entry level work is. That's what internships are for. So we already know how to do that. Why are you asking this question? As student recruitment networks grow in popularity, Koenig said his biggest concern is ensuring that people are equally represented on the platforms. Okay, on what basis and by what mechanism? Quote, "Setting aside whether there's bias or discrimination from recruiters." Okay, well, obviously, I'm assuming you don't mean bias or discrimination towards a valuable employee or an effective hire, because all recruiters have bias and are discriminating. So I can only assume you mean they're all racists and or sexists. If first-gen students first-gen students. I hear this all the time, a first-generation college student. What does that have? I'm honestly, I have no idea, okay? I mean, when I went into college, I was the first one in my family to go into college and complete a 4-year degree. All right. So technically speaking, I was a first generation college graduate. Okay. Which means what? How is that different from someone who's going in and their parents are also college graduates? I still do not understand ultimately what that distinction means of anything. If you graduated college, you graduated college. If you ended up in college, you're at the same point that anybody who had parents that went to college ended up in college. What does that mean? Or what is that code for, I suppose? If first-gen students aren't using these apps as much or aren't filling them out, then I worry it doesn't shift the playing field in any meaningful way, Koning said. So you're a salesperson for these job apps? Teach kids to look for a job without an app, and they will be more than prepared to find a job with an app. How about that? The makers of these tools want to host as many students from as many backgrounds as possible on their platforms. Of course they do, because they get paid on successful referrals. You don't say. It's essential to their business pitch. And it's something they think about constantly. Well, it is their business. The goal is to help companies access a diverse candidate pool and help students access opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. Without a strong user base, neither of these things can happen. Okay. All of that, I suppose, is true. But again, and I ask again, and I will continue to ask, what specific mechanism takes place or is in place in these apps to provide these companies with quote unquote diverse candidates? Define diverse and tell me how the apps ensure that diverse candidates end up in front of the employers. A wider reach. Digital recruitment networks can broaden choices on both the student and company sides of hiring. The search is easier when everyone is in the same digital space and can search by category for the jobs and candidates relevant to them. Monster.com. How is that any different than what Monster.com was doing in the 90s? I'm not saying it's an ineffective method. I'm just asking what about any of that is innovative or new? And what does any of that have to do with finding quote unquote diverse candidates? Ariel Lopez, CEO of hiring platform Knack, said he believes strongly in the democratization of the recruitment process. Aha, democratization. It's almost like I've heard this stuff before. Quote, the bigger vision here is making this process fair for everyone involved, Lopez said. Okay, how do you do that? Quote, we want to make it faster and easier for the company to find the right people. Qualify right. But we also care about the people that are in your pipelines. Okay, they're more than just a resume, they're humans. And what does that mean? Okay, you want to make it fair, and you want to remember that you're dealing with people. All right, so how do you achieve that in your company or with your product? Lopez began her career helping brands and startups with recruitment. She went on to found Knack, which helps companies manage and give feedback to candidates in their application pipeline. She wants to eliminate the quote-unquote black hole of resumes and ensure companies aren't ignoring qualified and passionate people. Okay. I am not intending to be a broken record here. How? How do you ensure that? What does your product do to ensure that? Often, even major tech companies have incompetent applicant management strategies with candidates, quote, swimming in spreadsheets, unquote, Lopez said. Okay, so you do what? Arsh Noor Amin, an engineering graduate student at Bucknell University, appreciates the consolidation of opportunities on platforms like Handshake. Yes, Monster.com is very helpful. He can easily message recruiters and find software jobs that work for him as a student from Pakistan. What does him being from Pakistan have to do with anything? Quote, when you're an international student, there's more logistical stuff that you have to think about because I would need sponsorship if I were to get hired somewhere. Aha. Amin, who participated in Handshake study, said, quote, in Handshake, there's a little tag that companies can set saying they accept international students. Or you could ask. I don't know. The consolidation helps employers too. So wait, that's it. A little tag that says accepts international students. So far, that is the only thing that this article has mentioned that any of these apps proactively do to help candidates. A tag for international hirers or employers. Okay. The consolidation helps employers too. Renee Davis, director of recruiting at Duolingo, started using Handshake to find employees in March 2020. The game-changing aspect was being able to access such a large student network all at once. Okay, well, then I guess my question is, prior to Handshake, was there no student-to-employer platform on the internet? Specifically, student-to-employer platform. Or if there were they all crappy? Quote, what Handshake has enabled us to do is kind of change the landscape of university recruiting, Davis said. Quote, we can send an email campaign to students at 25 different schools, see who's opened the message, be able to segment based on different fields and criteria and target for a follow-up. Okay, I have a hard time believing that any of that was somehow unavailable before Handshake, but maybe I'm wrong. Sometimes the tools are lacking in features, however. Andrea Robinson, a junior at UCLA who's looking for marketing jobs. Andrea, tell me you put some shoe leather into looking for marketing jobs. If you're going to be a marketing, okay. Said Handshake is useful for finding companies, but she'll still apply directly through the company itself. Good for you, Andrea. Good for you. Quote, sometimes in the Handshake description, it will say, you cannot apply through here, unquote. Robinson said, this disparity can make it confusing for students to navigate. Why is that confusing? What? If you cannot apply through this app, is confusing to a student looking for a job at a tech company, let's say, maybe that person... Okay. A more personalized process. Handshake released a report in October looking at how Gen Z navigates the digital job market. Well, with their fingertips. The main takeaways were that a majority of students, particularly women, feel they don't need to meet in person to make meaningful professional connections. Why particularly women? Interesting. The report also found that a majority, particularly students of color, feel that it's easier to break into careers compared to their parents' generation. Well, the simple networking advantages of the internet have made it easier comparatively, yes. That's been known since the 90s. Digital communication is often thought to be isolating, but for some, it's freeing. How many is some? Quote, it's hard to sometimes be at an in-person event and to know that some of the other students who may have louder or more, who may be louder or more vocal are going to eat up a lot of the time that you might have, Cruz Vergara said. So people who are outgoing and are, yes. What? Quote, when you do virtual, you have this dedicated space and time where you get a chance to really build a relationship one-on-one with somebody else, unquote. Okay. Were we talking about like internships and entry level and stuff? And what do most internships and entry level stuff have to do with interacting with people? Hive, too, here we go, is focused on helping its candidates build deeper connections, okay? Each student on the platform assembles comprehensive resumes, Monster.com, encouraged by Hive to include as much information about identity and lived experience as they feel comfortable. What if I just let my experience on my resume do the talking? Do I have a lesser chance of getting a job through Hive if I don't confess my lived experience to them? And what exactly constitutes identity and lived experience on the Hive app? These are just the questions I have. Quote, we're celebrating a wide range of diverse experiences, not slicing and dicing it in this superficial way, unquote. Sorry, what? Superficial? Define diversity. Define identity. I mean, now I don't know what your specific definitions of those two terms are, but I know what the common parlance says they are. So tell me again about not slicing and dicing in a superficial way. Senior Vice President Alexis McLaughlin said, the platform wants students to share their qualifications. No, you said identity and lived experience. That's not a qualification. And not unless lived experience means here's my work experience and interests beyond professional bullet points. Why? Are you looking for an employee or a date? Okay, don't answer that. Quote, I was able to project a really holistic view of myself to companies. NYU student Brammer said, oh, this is Jordan again. Okay. Instead of a, here's my resume and here are some facts about me, it's more of an interpersonal connection through Hive. Yes, dump more and more personal, non-work related information into a cloud-based app that is connected to multiple corporations. Sounds fine. Here's my question. Are you looking for a job or a relationship? There's a slight barrier to entry with Hive, in that the platform puts its student users through various training sessions to make their applications more attractive to employers. How so? It's free to join, but Hive, quote, makes our kids work, unquote, founder Byron Slosar said. Quote, we say often, fewer resumes, better hires. The quick apply button is the fastest way to nowhere. It feels great to fire off 200 applications, but it feels worse not to hear from anybody, unquote. When I did my little 2-mile radius search, I got response. Let's see, I sent out, I'm trying to remember. I used to remember this. It was something like 35 or 36 applications. And that was just in like, again, a 2-mile radius of where I lived. I got responses back from 15 of those. Some were automated and not very promising, but some were in person. But yeah, the one that sort of ended up becoming my my go-to was the guy wondering, how the heck did you find out about this job? So, yeah, I mean, maybe that's just me. Maybe it's my name. My name made it all happen. I'm sure all by itself. It feels great to fire off 200 applications. If you're firing off 200 applications, man, either you are in a very generalized industry or field, which is entirely possible, or it feels worse not to hear from anybody. Well, yeah, job hunting is bad. As everyone discusses the Great Resignation and companies struggle to recruit the talent they want, some of the power has shifted to workers. A lot of the conversation centers around offering currently employed workers better benefits and pay. Yeah, but it should be normalized for those entering the workforce as well. Why? If someone's currently employed and has a work history that they can, I mean, it is one of those things like, how do I prove I can do something without a work history in order to get a job to get a work history? Yeah, it is kind of a catch-22, but normalize. Messy recruitment processes can really turn qualified people off. Or lazy people. I don't know. The quote, this war of talent is actually in talent's favor, Lopez says. People can make demands right now and companies will meet them. It's advantageous for any company to really be thinking, quote, how do we rewrite what we're doing here? Rewire what we're doing here, unquote. For recruitment tools, putting power in young people's hands is what it's all about. Quote, you get to decide who you know, and you get to build the network that you want to have, and that is really powerful, Cruz Vergara said. And none of that is news. None of it. And all of it has been available to people electronically, at least, since the 90s. And none of this article answered anything about how do these platforms lead to, quote unquote, more diverse candidates. Specifically in Hive, because that's what this is about. Hive diversity. You want people to put into their resumes not only their job experience, but their identity and their lived experience. And what does that mean? What does that look like? How are those elements used by employers to decide who to attempt to recruit? All right, well, let's move to the last article I have. And this comes from a very storied source, Time Magazine, or Charter in partnership with Time, because that's how this works now. What Gen Z can teach employers about diverse hiring. Oh, okay. What can Gen Z teach employers? From November 30th, 2021. Before I get into that, go to the chat real quick. I have been engrossed in my reading. Let's see. Kieferdam says, aren't women more social, though? Well, maybe they're more social media. Huh? And Prosaic Dreams in Blue, I thought women statistically like meeting in person. Well, that article says otherwise, apparently. So there you go. Let's see. Who else? Arc 210. I was able to bring my authentic self to work. Thanks, High Diversity. Yeah. I mean, really, what does your authentic self have to do with the job you're doing? Maybe I'm just an old fuddy-duddy. I go to work to do my job and then go home again. I was very fortunate, and I still am very fortunate, to have a boss who has a philosophy of my workday is my workday, and once my workday is complete, as much as is possible, it's done. There's a line between my life and my job, a very distinct line that once crossed doesn't get crossed back unless absolutely necessary. There was a scene in a movie called A Civil Action with John Travolta and Robert Duvall. And Robert Duvall is this lawyer, and he's sitting down in this basement listening to the radio and eating his lunch, and some intern has to come down to the basement to interrupt him. And he gives the intern this speech. I won't repeat it here. If you want to find it on YouTube or something, it's great. And it really, really encapsulates both how I think about working and how my boss thinks about it, thankfully. And I wish more people either did or had the option to think about it. I understand that there are a lot of jobs out there where you're effectively always on call, and it sucks. But if you have any ability to draw that line between your workday and your real life, by all means, try to do it, because you have to work to live, but you should not live to work. Just saying. Let's see. Anybody else before I move on? Jedi Ghost Bear. Hey, Scribe. Hey, Jedi Ghost Bear. How's it going? Kieverdan, you still working from home? Yes, I am still currently working from home, and more likely than not, it may be the new normal going forward, because for whatever else might have happened, the pandemic has proven, especially to my boss, that we don't need a giant piece of office space to operate. And that is a major consideration, because rent doesn't go down over time. So it will likely be the case in the near future that a lot of us will be working from home, and there'll be some, small office space somewhere to house things and have meetings. But yeah. Okay, it's crunch time for college applications, which means that right now, in one essay prompt after another, gatekeepers of sprawling state campuses and small liberal arts institutions alike are asking students to define how they'd add to a school's diversity. Aha. Okay. Pardon me while I wet my palate. Consider the first option on the common application used by more than 900 schools to determine admissions. Quote, some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent. I have a feeling that most of this language was not present on anything I had to deal with when I was going to college, but some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story, unquote. I can gleek really far. That's a talent. I wonder if I put that on a college application. Would that make me like more diverse? You know, give me a little orange juice and I can like gleek like a squirt gun. Would that get me somewhere in a college application these days, you think? Would that make me a Punky Brewster amongst all the mundanes out there? In its application, Macalester College has taken things a step further, saying two of its core values are, quote, multiculturalism and internationalism. And one way we try to live these values is providing students space to express their identities beyond a checkbox, unquote. What if I'm just a American citizen? Of course, I don't know where Macalester College is, so. One college essay consultant offers ideas on how applicants can elaborate on the quote-unquote nuances of their background. Okay, quote, has your family lived in the same town for multiple generations? What if I'm an army brat? Or what if my parents' work took us where the jobs were? Maybe you're the first person in your family to go to college. Well, I hear first generation students mean something. Maybe you were raised by your mother and grandmother, unquote. Okay, okay, I'll dare ask, what does any of that do with college application, college admissions? I mean, if you're asking for some kind of like socioeconomic status kind of thing, like how much does my family make each year? What's our income and stuff? If you're going to use that as a metric for considerations for scholarships or opportunities, okay, use that in concert with my academic achievements to that point. Sure, that's reasonable. What does that have to do with anything? Raised by my mother and grandmother? Now consider how we have. Sorry, I keep sticking on those things. Like, what are you saying there? Nuances? I can guess, but I don't like guessing. Now consider how we evaluate applicants for jobs and how frequently the idea of diversity is reduced to the checking of boxes Macalester describes. That is, if candidates broach it at all. If you're getting a job at a company, more often than not, you're there to serve a function, a very specific function. And the question is, do you have the relevant skills? Yes or no? It's a very binary thing, right? Do you have a degree in computer science? Do you have work experience with Excel? If you do not have these boxes checked for the job, the actual function you will be serving, that matters. So what checking boxes are you talking about otherwise if you're not talking about job skills and work experience? And are companies supposed to be evaluating candidates on the basis of anything other than? LinkedIn and resumes and personal websites are carefully crafted to focus on skills and quantifiable successes over elements of a person's identity. Yes, because you are there to serve a function, not to fulfill a demographic quota, unless you are there to fulfill a demographic quota. And if so, that company may be violating civil rights laws. As a hiring manager who wants to center Black capital B and brown lowercase b talent, and that's not me, like, I'm just pointing that out because it's a very interesting thing that keeps happening. Okay, this is going to be an interesting confession. As a hiring manager who wants to center Black and brown talent, I confess I sometimes can't even tell if a candidate is, well, Black or brown. Let's all take a moment and sit with that for a sec, shall we? Do 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 do. Civil rights laws are being broke, and this person is anyway. Why is that a problem? I'll scour a person's materials for linguistic ability, trade associations, and the list of degrees to see if any are from a historically black college or university. In my decades of hiring, any glimpse into a candidate's humanity in their resume or cover letter, even sharing details like the fact that they paid their way through school or took care of siblings, is rare. Okay, for those in the cheap seats, I just want to go over this one more time. Okay, now, keeping in mind civil rights laws, equal opportunity in employment laws, okay? As a hiring manager who wants to center black and brown talent, I confess I sometimes can't even tell if a candidate is, well, black or brown. I'll scour a person's materials for linguistic ability, trade associations, and the list of degrees to see if any of them are from a historically black college or university. In my decades of hiring, any glimpse into a candidate's humanity in their resume or cover letter, even sharing details like the fact that they paid their way through school or took care of siblings, is rare. I just want to point out just how casual, how comfortable, how offhanded this confession of racial discrimination is in a hiring manager. Just right there. Anyone that this person has ever looked at in a hiring context who is not either, as they say themselves, black or brown, now has at least one piece, if not the open doorway to a lawsuit against any company this person was hiring for on a civil rights basis. If they applied to any of the companies this hiring manager was working for and did not get the job, this is one arrow in the quiver of a civil rights lawsuit. Just want to put that out there. There are certain demographics questions employers cannot ask outright without opening themselves up to lawsuits. You don't say. Golly gee whiz, and guess what you've just done? Guess what you've just done, Mitra Kalita? Guess what you've just done? If I go over your LinkedIn profile and I find every company you've ever worked for as a hiring manager, with that confession, you might have put yourself and your former employers into legal jeopardy, or at least added to the argument thereof. You just did that. So, okay, go on. This is fascinating. I'm glad I found this article. Go on. Tell me more. There are certain demographic questions employers cannot ask outright without opening themselves up to lawsuits, but you look for clues so you don't have to say you specifically hired someone on the base. Mm-hmm. And candidates' reticence to proactively highlight the personal is understandable. Okay, so race is personal. Skin color is a personal attribute to you. Okay. Attitudes towards black-sounding names among job applicants haven't budged much in 18 years, despite a lot more attention on systemic racism and unconscious bias in the workplace. Yeah. Guess who is systematically racist and biased in this narrative? That would be you. You just told us. But hey, if there was a black-sounding name, would that make you more or less likely to put that person in the contact pile? You already answered that question. You already answered that question. In a recent National Bureau of Economic Research working paper, academics submitted 83,000 fake job applications and found black names, quote, reduce the likelihood of hearing back from an employer by 2.1 percentage points relative to distinctly white names. 2.1 percentage points. So within the usual and accepted margin of error, you say. Okay. 2.1 percentage point. Yet there's a generation of new employees just entering the workforce who have been asked to assert their identity every step of the way. I guess so. What becomes of them? And how should workplaces adjust to the way they've been taught to represent themselves? I don't know. What should employers do? What should employees do? What should hiring managers do? How do we solve for this problem? We look for clues in the resume as to the race of the person so I can center them into the hiring process. That is a remarkable confession, I got to say. Oh, here we go. One shift managers will have to make, says Alexis McLaughlin, Senior Vice President of Business Development at the recruiting platform Hive Diversity, is to stop framing race and identity as something employees disclose. What? Rather, quote, we encourage our users to share, in italics, she says, a subtle but meaningful tweak that encourages workers to view their lived experience as an asset to potential teams beyond the hiring process. Okay, listen to this. Listen to this. We encourage our users to share. Okay, so rather than asking them directly, what is your race and or gender and or orientation, whatever, we encourage them to share. Just let us know of your own volition. We're not asking, but if you want to tell us without us sort of coercing you, then we can't be accused of directly trying to hire on the basis of particular demographics, and that would be illegal. Are you kidding me? Wow, this article is incredible. But between our author's confession and this subtle but meaningful tweak, and you know what that means, subtle but meaningful legal liability tweak. Wow. I think this is the most, and I'm talking in relative terms here, this is the most revealing article on this subject, and so far, this company, that I've read in this series. Quote, we need to make it more about the person than the professional, she says. This new generation cares about this, and we need to speak their language, unquote. Wow. Hive's founder and CEO, Byron Slosar, sees the platform as a sort of dating app for current... Did I call it? Did I call it? Oh, man, gives a whole new meaning to the phrase, fuck this job. One where students get to make the first move. Oh, man. Okay, after I'm done here, I am tweeting this article out for everybody to read. It is amazing. Quote, a lot of hiring managers are scared to talk about diversity. Well, including our author, apparently. She just looks for the clues. Quote, they'll say, where do I look for diverse talent? It's not where you look, but how you look. Well, yeah, of course, you have to look and see. Do they come from a historically black college? Do they have particular linguistic abilities that might indicate their race? Oh, man, this is so amazing. Including an expanded understanding of the factors that diversify a talent pool. As an example, he mentions first-generation college students who might receive resources and extra help on campus, but also need attention and mentorship once hired into their first jobs. Yes, because if you're the first person in your family to go to college, you're obviously an idiot. I mean, what the fuck are they saying? Like, what is first generation college students supposed to denote to me? Okay. What is that supposed to denote to me in the general sense? It's an impairment. It's a liability. It's an indicator of needing special help in life in general. That's what's being sold to me here. Taking a cue from college applications, I asked Slosar what elements of his identity he highlights. Do tell, Byron. Quote, my value to the workforce is not that I am gay and grew up in Louisiana with 5 siblings. You're right. None of those things have any measure of value to your job performance or ability. You're right. Rather, it's the diversity of our lived experiences, he says. Quote, I am still massively relevant, even though I did not struggle the way others have struggled. Okay. I have a 3.5-year-old and raised him in the middle of the pandemic. Byron, you started your company in the fall of 2019 when there wasn't a pandemic. So I am not saying my struggle is more or less relevant. I'm gonna highlight this part right here. I am still massively relevant, even though I did not struggle the way others have struggled. I have a 3.5-year-old and raised him in the middle of the pandemic. I am not saying my struggle is more or less relevant. We all have our own experiences, and that's what diversity in the workforce is supposed to be. This entire paragraph, as explanation and example, means nothing. Your sexual orientation, where you grew up, how many siblings you had, whether or not you're raising a child in the middle of a pandemic, says nothing about you. You could be a terrible person and have all of those elements in your background. What does any of that have to do with your work ethic, your punctuality, your specific skills and experience that lend themselves to the job you're looking for? Nothing. That is precisely what colleges are trying to achieve, says Hafiz Lakhani, founder and president of Lakhani Coaching, a college admissions prep and consulting firm. Quote, think about selective admissions like a dinner table, he tells me. Quote, representations of diversity, be it ethnic, gender, or simply the fact that the student plays a rare instrument, adds something intangible to that dinner table conversation, making it richer in perspective for other students in the community, unquote. Okay, let's go over that real quick. Representations of diversity. Okay. Ethnic, gender, or the ability to play a rare instrument. Of those 3 elements, which one is a marker of talent and merit? Which one of those is a marker of ability? Reduced enrollments from international students, Lakhani says, are one way pandemic-era college campuses are not only less diverse, but less reflective of a globalized workforce. Well, okay. I suppose I can agree with that notion. I'm not quite sure what that has to do with anything that he just said, but yes, the travel restrictions on the basis of the pandemic have likely hindered a lot of people coming here or going elsewhere for education. I'll give you that. As we seek to bring diverse hires into our workplaces, yes, hiring manager who looks specifically for people on the basis of skin color that they can divine by elements of their resume. We need to assess our screening and interview questions to ensure we're being intentional and not just striving for cosmetic diversity. Excuse me a moment. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. I feel like I'm reading a TEDx here. Okay, so we need to assess our screening and interview questions to ensure we're being intentional and not just striving for cosmetic diversity. Allow me to initialize the flux capacitor. Boop. As a hiring manager who wants to center Black and brown talent, so let's combine these things, shall we? As a hiring manager who wants to center Black and brown talent, we need to assess our screening and interview questions to ensure we're being intentional and not just striving for cosmetic diversity. See how those kind of fit so cleanly together and make absolutely no sense? Yeah. Yep. Thank you, Okie Native. Irony, thy name is that statement. Isn't it though? Isn't it though? Within their own article, from the beginning to the end, the book ended with cognitive dissonance and abject self-denial. To borrow language from the college essay, we might ask, how do you see your identity and how might it contribute to the diversity of our company? The question, okay, well, first off, you should have put quotation marks around that question because it's its own separate thought, but never mind. I don't mean to harp too much on this. The question alone sends another message. We don't only care about what you've done, who you are matters too. Skin color does not define character. I don't know if our author is aware of this. Skin color does not define character. And if you think that skin color defines character, you are a racist. But hey, that's not what we're going for here. We're going for diverse workforces, and we're not asking students to specify their race, their orientation, their gender. We're just encouraging them to share those elements of themselves so we don't look like we're breaking civil rights. I got to tweet this out, guys. And all, all sarcasm and hyperbole otherwise aside, this is an amazing article of confession. An amazing, just uncouched, unfiltered, honest. I appreciate here's the thing. For everything that I obviously find exception to in this article, in the way of ideology and ideas and such, I am so glad it is here. I am so glad that our author feels this comfortable saying this, because it really is exemplative of where we are at right now in the quote-unquote dialogue. Abject, total racial discrimination confessed in no uncertain terms, and an encouragement towards legal loopholing, asking people to tell companies about these elements of themselves so they don't necessarily make a decision on the basis of that. But if the information's there, it's actually amazing. Both our author's quotes and the quotes from the Hive diversity executive. Amazing. I am glad that this article exists. I'll be tweeting it out after the show here for everybody to see. I'll be tagging several individuals on the off chance they find it interesting as well. Thank you again, Okie Native. Maybe they hire for escort services where this information is useful, so they have a full stable of talent for the discerning businessman. Well, as the CEO of Hive Diversity wanted us to know, looking for a job should be like looking for a date. Who gets to make the first move? Okay, I'll take a couple minutes here for any comments you guys have, and then I'm going to move on and wrap up my broadcasting day. Lexi Mads, oh, yes, it does. Also question, why are white people not a community or culture unlike the quote-unquote marginalized groups, but they still refer to white people as a monolith when it comes to racism? Well, here's my question. If you have a first-generation college student who had 5 siblings, grew up in Louisiana, and was also gay, but nothing on the application said that they were white, would that be a non-starter then, if you knew that? If our hiring manager could see all of that information on a person's resume, but still could not discern skin color, what do you think our hiring manager would do? Or if she could, what do you think she would do? Let's see. Trippy Cats. Human beings have little to no genetic diversity, though. It's like killing all the Neanderthals was a bad idea. Well, again, diversity has nothing to do, it has everything to do with aesthetics. It is comical that our author, after her introduction, would say we're trying to avoid cosmetic diversity. Comical. And even if she hadn't said that, for anybody in this day and age to say that diversity and inclusion initiatives are not about cosmetics, are not about demographic quotas, is either ridiculously naive or outright lying. There's no way around it. Let's see. Anybody else? ARC 210. I can't wait for the day when these companies start collapsing because of hiring non-qualified applicants based on skin color. I don't care so much about that as much as where is the EEOC on something like this? Where are the civil rights attorneys on things like this? I mean, setting aside just the idea of, following the law, there is right now a gigantic pot of money waiting for any civil rights lawyer or law firm thereof to pursue cases against companies and individuals who run companies that say this stuff loudly and proudly. There should be such a financial motivator here, both for the people to seek lawsuits and for companies to start dumping this philosophy lickety-split, because it is not going to be anything other than a liability going forward, but only if somebody decides to say something about it and make a precedent that's going to make these companies stop for a second and think about exactly what they are doing and what they are promoting by doing it. But hey, it's been going on for years now, and I haven't seen much of a pushback yet. So anyway, with that, I think I'm going to wrap up here, guys. So yeah, this article is amazing. This entire stream was worth it just for this article. And I'm so glad I came across it. I'm going to tweet it out. Again, tag several people who might be interested in it. And I hope other people start reading this too, at least as a starting point for what's exactly going on in the hiring industry specifically, but also regarding our friends at Hive Diversity. This has been the most revealing little piece of information and quotation from anybody at Hive Diversity about what their intentions are and how they go about doing what they do to provide diverse candidates to their client companies. They nudge students not to explicitly give information on their particular demographics, but just, encourage them to share. Because we don't want to make it explicit, because that might be treading a legal line. But if they do it of their own volition, if they just willingly give us that information and we just happen to glance at it as we're making our hiring decision, well, we can't. Unconscious bias, it happens, except when it's not unconscious and you're specifically trying to center people on the basis of their skin color and do a Sherlock Holmes to try to find indications that'll make you feel justified in hiring someone on the basis of their skin color. This is an amazing article. Anyway, everybody, thank you guys so much for joining me this morning. I know it's been a bit of a slog, not exactly a regular live stream and as exciting as watching a video or a panel discussion, but I think all the same, it's been ridiculously enlightening and, if only in a crying clown kind of way, entertaining. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can find me here every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence, where I'll go over live action versions of what this article kind of laid out occasionally, or talks about smart toilets that really were pretty crappy. And elsewise, I have a whole bunch of content on my channel. If you have not seen it yet, there's plenty of playlists and stuff and things that I've been doing over the last 5 years that fall within the same category. You can go back in time to how this kind of thing was handled 4 or 5 years ago and draw similarities and comparisons and just see how things have evolved or devolved, as the case may be. But all of that being said, thank you for joining me again. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everyone who donated, thank you. Thank you so much for your generosity, especially at this time of year. I really do appreciate it. Hope you all enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I hope you and yours are all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon. Everybody, take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.